You think the villain in your life is circumstances, bad luck, people holding you back, the economy, the system, or time. But the brutal truth is this. The real villain has always been the weak mindset you keep protecting, the voice you obey, the habits you excuse. Because a weak mindset doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't attack. It negotiates, and it speaks directly to you in moments where effort is required and comfort looks easier. And you listen, you delay, you rationalize, and you call it patience or timing, when deep down you know it's fear wearing intelligence as a mask. And you feel it every time you say tomorrow, every time you overthink instead of act, every time you choose rest before you've earned exhaustion, every time you quit early and call it balance. And stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly what's been holding you back and why most people never escape it. Because a weak mindset doesn't destroy lives in one loud moment. It erodes them quietly, day by day, decision by decision, until years pass and nothing has changed except regret. You wake up tired not from effort but from avoidance, frustrated not because you tried and failed, but because you never fully committed, stuck watching others move forward while you analyze, hesitate, and wait for motivation like it's a permission slip. And the most dangerous part is how normal this feels, how justified it sounds, how easy it is to blame circumstances instead of confronting the truth that discipline was required. And you chose comfort, that action was available, and you chose delay, that growth demanded discomfort, and you chose safety. And the pain of this doesn't come immediately, it comes later, heavy and suffocating. When you realize potential doesn't expire loudly, it fades quietly. And then comes the moment where awareness stops feeling sad and starts feeling angry. Because something inside you recognizes the pattern, recognizes that weakness is not who you are, it's what you were trained to tolerate. It's conditioning, repetition, a habit reinforced every time you avoided pressure, every time you waited to feel ready, every time you let emotions decide your actions. And in that moment, the tone changes. Because you stop asking why life is hard and start seeing that a weak mindset has been quietly sabotaging you. You start seeing it as the enemy it is. The voice that says, slow down when speed is required. The voice that negotiates effort, that bargains with discipline, that demands comfort before progress, that fears routine, structure, and repetition. Because those things expose it, and understand this clearly. The weak mindset does not disappear. It waits, it adapts, it evolves, and it must be dominated daily, confronted daily, overridden by action daily. Because every time you hesitate, it grows stronger. Every time you act despite resistance, it weakens, and there is no neutral ground. You are either feeding it or starving it. And this is where the old version of you dies. The version that waited for motivation, that needed validation, that needed perfect conditions, that needed to feel confident before moving. That version cannot come forward into the next phase. It has to burn decisively, because strength cannot be built on softness and growth cannot coexist with excuses. So the waiting stops, the explaining stops, the justifying stops, and what replaces it is discipline. Not hype, not inspiration, not emotion. Discipline rooted in systems. Discipline rooted in showing up when the mind resists. Discipline rooted in doing the work without applause, without certainty, without guarantees. Because action creates confidence, repetition creates identity, and consistency crushes weakness. You learn that self-improvement is not a feeling, it is a standard. It is waking up and executing regardless of mood. It is training when tired, focusing when bored, pushing when uncomfortable. Because the weak mindset hates routine, hates structure, hates repetition. It thrives on chaos and emotion and impulse, and the moment you impose order on your life, it starts to suffocate. And then you enter the silent phase, the phase most people never see coming, where there is less talking and more execution, fewer explanations and higher standards. Emotions become information, not commands. Distractions lose their appeal. Opinions lose their weight, and strength becomes quiet, efficient, inevitable. You stop advertising growth and start embodying it. You stop needing recognition because progress speaks for itself. And in that silence, the weak mindset loses its power because it has nothing to negotiate with, no emotional door to knock on, no hesitation to exploit, and what remains is an unbreakable identity, forged through discomfort, reinforced through discipline, solidified through consistency, where weakness no longer defines you. Discomfort feels normal, effort feels necessary, and growth becomes non-negotiable. Not because life got easier, but because you became harder, sharper, more controlled. And this is not motivation. This is a code. This is the line you stop crossing backwards. The moment you recognize the real villain was never outside you. And from this point forward, weakness is confronted, discipline is enforced, and growth is the only outcome allowed. You thought the battle was out there. Circumstances, people, luck, timing. But it was never outside, it was always inside, and now that truth is unavoidable. Because once you see a weak mindset for what it is, you can't unsee it anymore. You start hearing it every time it whispers, telling you to delay, to rest when you haven't earned it, to wait until you feel ready, to stop because it's uncomfortable. And that voice doesn't sound like an enemy. It sounds like you, calm, logical, reasonable. And that's why it's dangerous. Because it convinces you to betray your own potential slowly, politely, without drama, day after day, until ambition feels heavy and discipline feels impossible. And you start calling weakness realism, fear wisdom, and quitting balance. And deep down you know it. You felt it in those quiet moments when you said tomorrow, when you closed the laptop, skipped the work, avoided the pressure, and told yourself it didn't matter. But it did. It always did. Because every time you obeyed that voice, it grew stronger. And every time you resisted it, even a little, it weakened. That's the law. That's the pattern. And now awareness has sharpened into something heavier, something colder, something that doesn't need hype. Because anger has replaced confusion, not loud anger, controlled anger, the kind that burns excuses on contact, the kind that looks at the weak mindset and says, "You are not me anymore, you are not my identity, you are the resistance I train against." And from here on, nothing dramatic changes, no music, no applause, no big speech, just discipline taking its seat quietly, standards rising without announcement, action happening before confidence shows up. Systems replacing moods, consistency replacing intensity, and the old version starts suffocating, not because of motivation, but because it can't survive in an environment where excuses aren't tolerated, where comfort isn't prioritized, where discipline shows up even when the mind begs to stop. And that's when the shift becomes permanent, because strength stops trying to prove itself, it stops explaining, it stops seeking validation, it just executes day after day, silently, relentlessly, until weakness has nowhere left to hide and discomfort becomes famine. IR, normal, expected, not a threat, not a warning, just part of the terrain. And at that point, the weak mindset doesn't vanish. It still speaks, it still negotiates, it still offers comfort, but it has lost authority. It no longer decides, because the code is written now, not in words, but in behavior, in repetition, in discipline applied when no one is watching. And that's the final truth, the one that doesn't sound motivational but changes everything. That you don't defeat a weak mindset once, you dominate it daily, through action, through standards, through refusing to live as someone lesser than what you know is possible. And from this moment forward, there is no confusion about who is in control. Because the rule is set, the identity is sealed, and weakness no longer runs this life. You don't lose because the world is unfair. You lose because a weak mindset keeps negotiating with your potential every single day. You already feel it, the hesitation before action, the comfort chosen instead of growth, the excuse dressed up as logic. Stay with this, because by the end of these words, you'll see clearly what's been holding you back, and why most never escape it. A weak mindset doesn't scream, it whispers. Wait a little longer. Start tomorrow. You deserve rest. Avoid the pressure, protect your comfort. And every time you listen, something inside you shrinks. Opportunities pass, discipline fades, confidence rots quietly, others move forward while you analyze. You call it overthinking, it's fear in disguise. That realization should make you angry, not emotional, but sharp. Because weakness is not who you are, it's what you've tolerated. This is the moment it gets challenged. The weak mindset is the real villain. It fears effort, negotiates standards, and panics when discipline shows up. It never disappears. It gets dominated. The old version dies here, the one waiting for motivation, seeking approval, quitting mentally before the work even starts. Let it die. Growth begins when excuses end. Action comes before confidence. Discipline replaces emotion. Systems replace moods. Progress happens even on empty days, quietly, relentlessly. This is where the warrior becomes silent. No announcements, no validation, just execution. Standards rise, noise fades, weakness loses its grip. And from this point forward, discomfort is normal. Discipline is identity, growth is non-negotiable. This isn't motivation anymore, it's a code you live by.